Alright, who is ready for a new alcohol brush marker review? So I was absolutely shocked when I found these at the store, and at first I assumed it was just Crayola trying to be sly and sell me some water-based markers under the guise of being comparable to alcohol-based markers. But I looked it up online and it specifically says they are not water-based. I couldn't find anywhere that it specifically said they were alcohol-based. However, I don't really know what else they could be, so for now I'm just gonna assume that they are. And the first thing I noticed was the smell. These ones definitely have an odor. I wouldn't work with them for too long in an enclosed space. I definitely turned on my desk fan while I was working on this review. The smell's not as strong as, say, a Sharpie, but it was quite noticeable. So here we have the entire line as far as I know, 14 colors and 2 colorless blenders. So first I'm going to swatch them all out, and unfortunately I am seeing a problem in that there are no skin colors here. The closest I have is this orange. There isn't even a tan or a brown. But anyway, there seem to be 2 tones of each color, a lighter one and a darker one, which will be nice for shading if these work out. The bleed test wasn't too bad. It definitely went through a page and through a bleed sheet, but it didn't go onto a second bleed sheet. Though it looks like it may have been close, so you definitely need 1 backing sheet and maybe even 2 to be safe when using these. For blendability, the standard yellow, red, orange gradient actually turned out really nicely. I was pretty impressed with the transition I was able to get going back and forth. The complementary color gradient wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. There was some amount of blending anyway, though not much to write home about. As for the push test, I laid down the dark blue and used the lightest yellow to see if it would push the blue ink away, and it sort of did. It wasn't great, it was really splotchy, but it did something rather than absolutely nothing, so that's a plus. The tip of the lighter marker did also pick up the dark blue ink off the page, and the color didn't really come off the tip ever, so it's definitely stained. However, it doesn't seem to affect the color payoff of the marker, so I'm not super mad at it, but it is a little irritating to my OCD. Now for the reactions. The blender did much the same as the yellow marker on the blue, so nothing new there. Once again, the acetone looked promising, like it would make a cool design or effect, but once it dried, it did die down considerably, so not so exciting. Alcohol, as per usual, didn't do very much, though it did make some interesting cloudy shapes. And probably the most interesting was actually the water. At first, it didn't look like anything happened, but once the water dried, the entire center where I painted got quite a bit lighter. I went with orange for the colored pencil test, and that went fine. Once again, similarly to Spectrum Noir, the Faber-Castell pencil did seem to blend better than the Prismacolor, which I again was surprised by since usually the opposite is true, but both colored pencil brands worked just fine. As for line variation, I have to say these tips are very flexible, which allows for some wide lines, which is great, but it also doesn't allow for the thinnest of lines. It can still draw pretty slim though, and it does go back and forth between thick and thin without ruining the tip, as other markers in this review series have, so that's a plus. Once that test was done, it was of course on to the fine liner test. Since I couldn't do a character with a normal skin tone, since I don't have one in this set, I decided to do Koro-sensei from Assassination Classroom since his skin is yellow, which I can do. I used my normal liners, Zebra Brush Pen, Copic Multi-Liner, Unipin Fine Liner, Faber-Castell, Staedtler, Sakura Pigma Micron, Prismacolor, and a dip pen with Indie ink. The zebra pen smudged pretty badly, as did the India ink and Copic multiliner, which 3 out of 8 isn't too bad. The most impressive thing I found while I was coloring was actually how compatible these markers are with layering. For example, I needed the stripes on his robes to be a darker, warmer blue than the dark blue I was supplied in this set. So I tried layering the purple marker over it, and it worked beautifully. I was shocked. It's not perfect, I mean nothing ever is, but I was really happy with how well sandwiching a color in between layers of another color was able to shift and tint the colors to more what I was looking to use. It definitely allowed for a greater range of colors than just the 14 colors supplied in this box. I also did that in the background, layering blue at the bottom edge with a black to make a more navy color. And then at the top edge, I used the colorless blender to try and help transition a little. I also threw on some acetone last minute to the background just to see what effects I could get. And that's pretty much the review. I was surprised how well I enjoyed using these markers and how well I think the art turned out in the end for what's usually considered a cheap kids brand of marker. I'll have all the ratings at the end as usual, but really the biggest problem I see right now is the color selection is limited and the smell is pretty bad. It did start to bother me by the time I finished this picture. But if you can work with those two things and you see these in your local store on the cheap, you might pick them up. You can do some cool things with them. Stay tuned to the end for my ratings based on category. Like this video if you like marker reviews. And leave me a comment suggesting other brush-tipped alcohol markers I should try out against my rubric. Also let me know, I'm running out of specifically brush-tip alcohol-based markers to review. Do you also want marker reviews of non-brush tip markers? Rather than rating the ink and the brush tip, I could just rate the ink formula and see how that stacks up. I don't know, just an idea. Like I say, I'm running out of real brush markers to compare to. Subscribe and ring the bell for more left brain stuff, and until my next video, I'll see y'all later. Bye!